Hi, very good afternoon to you. Guys, I just wanted to clear up a couple of misconceptions and also just talk about a few things that's going on here at the Observatory. Before I do, I think it's very important to always show some gratitude and thank those people that help us out, you know, not just with sharing the videos, but also those that join our Patreon and those that make off those one-off PayPal payments or donations. So huge thanks to you guys. I think, you know what, you're doing more than a lot of other people, and you know, I totally am grateful for your help and support. And you know what, I know directly you don't see this, but you know, by supporting us at the Observatory, you are actually supporting 20,000 people that view the website every week, and nearly 100,000 or more every month on YouTube, with the 60,000 plus subscribers that we've got right now. So we are making a little impression, you know, when you compare that on the grand scale of things. You know, obviously we could do a hell of a lot better, but you know, to do a bit is better than to do nothing at all. So you know, whoever gains access to the information and you know, the data that we provide is solely down to your support. I do, which people don't seem to think, invest money into this myself, and of course a hell of a lot of my time doing these videos, publishing them on YouTube, and also doing running the website and processing the data that we get from different sub stations around the world. You know, it does require a lot of time, and you can imagine that. And then updating the website also requires a lot of time, as well as a lot of different skills. So you know, I do whatever I can, and I have done that now for 11 years here. Not only have we been researching this main topic of magnetic pole reversals, but we have actively been collecting data using the scientific method with the equipment that we've got to date. And we have the only land-based Trimag system in the world, which is collecting data every 3 seconds and recording it onto the SD cards, so that we can pop them SD cards twice a month and find out what the magnetic North Pole is actually currently up to. We'll be doing that tomorrow for you guys as well. We're doing the latest magnetic pole update tomorrow. So you know, if you have the time, I know it's Sunday, I know it's time to spend with your families, but if you do have time, why not pop over onto YouTube, check us out and have a look at where the latest magnetic North Pole is and what it's up to. Now, I've got a couple of things to say. I want to get out first of all the misconception that people have. They confuse glacial periods with ice ages, and this is going to come to a shock to a few people, that we are, and have been for the last 15,000 years, been in an ice age. And the thing that defines an ice age is simply ice over the northern and southern hemispheres in the polar regions. That's it. So we've never left the last ice age. We're still in it, according to the fact that there is still, and has been for the last 15,000 years, let's say for argument's sake, ice on the caps of our planet, both northern and southern hemispheres. Glacial periods are very different beasts. A glacial period is where the Earth starts to rebound those glacials, and they move towards the equatorial regions from the polar regions of both northern and southern hemispheres. This is a big game changer for us, because when we get glacial periods, it shuts down the arable agricultural land over the northern and southern hemispheres and leaves a very thin sliver around the equatorial region or those tropic regions for possible crop production. And if we are moving into, and we already are, another glacial period, and I want to pull up the next chart so that you can see exactly where we are. And here is that chart that I show frequently, and it doesn't matter how many times people request to see, I don't mind keep showing it and going over it, because I've said before, you can see where we have peaked the last 4 times, and we're currently on the 5th time where it's peaked, and you know what will happen after this peak. we will go back into a glacial period. A bit later on, I'm going to show you the Arctic ice extent over the northern hemisphere, because there's 1.8 million square kilometres that have rebounded already in just 10 years. 1 decade we have rebounded the ice to the extent of 1.8 million square kilometres. That's a huge chunk of Europe, just to give you an idea. You can see that we pop past that black line on this chart every 90,000 years, and then we go into perhaps a 10 or 12,000 year cycle of an interglacial period. We've come to the end of that, and we're probably 2 to 4, maybe 6,000 years going back into the next glacial cycle. This you can check with whatever source you want. You will find that every 100,000 years we go back through these cycles. And you know, if I give a child in kindergarten a red crayon and I just said complete the pattern that you can see, the wavy pattern, and do the next part, I want you to show me the next part of where that red line would go, he would draw a line downwards. And you don't need to be a scientist to work that out. You just need to look at the past cycles of the last 450,000 years to know what is going to happen next. You don't need a crystal ball. You can just go on the repetitive cycles that have happened previously, and today there is nothing no different. Forget the CO2 levels, because CO2 during interglacial periods, when the oceans and land warms up, it does release more CO2, and that the reason why we haven't seen the larger spikes in the past 4 cycles and we are seeing it now is because scientists get their information from past cycles, from core samples, and what you're looking for is such a very, very small section of that core sample that would show the high levels of CO2 during that period of time. The other reason why you might not get it is because it is in, you know, the United Nations' best interest not to show those high peaks of CO2 perhaps towards the end of interglacial cycles. And you know, it should come as no surprise, because interglacials are actually relatively warm. 12,000 years ago we came out of the last glacial cycle, and we have enjoyed 12,000 years of warm weather. We've had a lot warmer weather than what we've had now, and I'll just bring up another chart to prove that, just so that you know that what I talk about is backed up with facts, and I'm not just making these things up. I want you to understand that these things are really happening, and people get confused. I don't mind explaining as many times as I have to until, you know, they understand, you know, what is going on. I don't mind, you know, finding very layman's ways of explaining it, because I understand that not everybody is very scientific. So I do my best to explain it in a way that, you know, you don't have to be very intelligent in science to understand it. You'll pick it up. Let's have a look at the other chart that shows that we have been in much warmer periods than what we are right now. And let's also ask the question is why these mainstream organisations not willing to talk about these warmer periods that we have had in the recent history of the last 10,000 years. Why is that? So just starting with the Younger Dryas, that was the end of the last glacial period that we was in, and then it warmed up towards the Holocene warm period. And if you look at where we are at present with global warming issues, so the United Nations keep telling us, you will see that the Holocene warm period, the Roman warm period, and the medieval warm period, in fact most of the last 9,000 years were much warmer than they are at this current present time and day. But we know why the United Nations won't mention this, because it wouldn't support their case in raising £500 billion a year, would it? No. But you can see clearly the end of the last glacial period and the warming of the last 9,000 years, which are much more warmer than the present day. And I think it's very important to mention this, because you know, there are a lot of people that only have access to mainstream media, and occasionally we're lucky to capture their imagination and attention here on this channel and show them an alternative way of looking at our history, which is backed up by facts and scientific investigation. And you know, when you hear organisations like the IPCC, the United Nations, the European Union talking about global warming issues relating to CO2 and that it's all man's fault, of course they only go back 100 or 150 years in the climate history to show their case. But what would you expect to see if we are at the end of an interglacial? What would you expect to see at that point in time? It's like they're selling the obvious, isn't it? Yes, we're going to be experiencing warmer temperatures. We also have experienced much warmer temperatures, but look at the end of the chart at the current time, what we're in right now, the present global warming time, we're at the lowest for the last 9,000 years. And they're saying we're at the highest. But the facts are in front of us. We can see we're at the lowest. And like I said on that last chart I showed with the red lines showing the indications of glacial and interglacials, we know we're going back into a glacial period. It's just a matter of time before we cross a thermocline, which is what you get in the oceans after a certain depth of sea. You will cross a thermocline where the temperatures above this thermocline are much warmer than the ones below it. I've done scuba diving and I have felt like the wall of a thermocline before. When you get down to a certain depth, you pass through a thermocline and you move into colder water, and you can put your hand in the thermocline, in that barrier where the water is colder beneath your elbow but warmer above it. And that is what I'm suggesting that we are possibly about to experience. And people say, oh, it could take thousands of years for the ice to start rebounding. Well, have a look at this.